tonight for our virtual academy students. Just wanted to take a minute and let you know that we are going to end promptly at 6:30. We're going to cover some math, reading, and writing. We're going to have some question time, but our goal tonight is really equip you with the knowledge of third grade content and provide you with some tips and tools and strategies of ways that you guys can help at home. So I don't know about how many of you saw Incredibles 2 when it came out a few years ago, but this video just says everything about elementary math right now. So let's take a look.
That's not the way you're supposed to do it, Dad. They want us to do it. I don't know that way. Why would they change math? Math is math. Math is math. I'll just wait for Mom to get back. What? Well, she won't understand it any better than I do.
So this is just a really great picture of kind of probably how we all feel about math as parents, because math does just look very different now than it did when we were all growing up. And so what we're going to do is we're going to walk you through a little bit of what our standards are from the state of Texas, what they look like, how you can help at home, give you some tips and tools. We're going to look at place value, fractions, and multi-step addition and subtraction word problems, just because we're just going to try and get you through to our next cluster night. So these are our standards for place value. And the biggest part is that we have two different sets of standards. We have what are called readiness, which are the ones that kids really need to be solid on in order to be prepared for fourth grade. And then we have supporting, which the supporting standards just do exactly that. They support the readiness. Sometimes it's kind of like scaffolded, sometimes it's like stair steps along the way, or other things that will help them with these standards, but it's not like they have to have it walking out. We want them to have it, but it's not the most essential. This is a little TED Talk video of a guy named Greg Tang. He is a huge guru in the math world and education, and he just makes a lot of sense about why we're teaching math the way we are now. And as a parent, I loved hearing it. And so it's a little bit long, but if you go forward to like minute 13, that's where he really starts talking. And so, but we'll let you guys do that on your own. So these are some strategies at home that you guys can make or create or do with your kids. They are not have tos. Each of these images are linked so that you can go to a blog post to see like what it is, how it works. Place value cups are just little bitty styrofoam cups with digits 0 through 9 written all the way around. And then when you pull the cups apart, it shows the value. So like where that 5 is under that index finger, it would, when you pull that out, you would see the 4 zeros for the thousands, hundreds, tens, and ones place to see that that digit is not, doesn't mean 5, it means 50,000. And so it helps with that expanded form, but also expanded notation. There's a foldable, that little green with 7,938 on there, kind of does the same type of thing. And then the bottom one is actually a like weekly pill container. And you can drop dice in there and have the kids kind of shake it, roll it, create new numbers. Just to practice their little place value strategies that they know, just to kind of keep that going. Place value is probably, without a doubt, the most foundational and most important skill that kids have, because it it leads into everything else that we teach, especially when we get into word problems. At the top, you'll see the image freebie. That is that picture of the 43 decomposed into 40 and 3 and then 30 and 13. This is really kind of describing how we want kids to be flexible with numbers and know that there's not just one way to make numbers by the value of the digit, that there's lots of ways that we can make it. So if you click on that image with the numbers, that actually takes you to what we would probably use as like a math station that you could print off for at home use if you so choose. And that's exactly what the QR code and that bit.ly link goes to as well. So we are in the thick of fractions right now. And so this kind of shows you the alignment of second grade going to third grade. And what you'll notice on the second grade side is that it's really just representing fractions. And they've been doing that since kindergarten. We're going to continue to represent. But you'll notice the picture on the left talks about determining equivalence and comparing fractions. And there are 0 standards in second grade taught. So this is the first time they've ever taken a fraction and had to determine what another equivalent fraction would be, or if one fraction is greater than or less than another. And that's where we're going over the next 3 weeks. So just know that it is tricky and it blows their mind because they really don't have any prerequisite skills from second grade to support them other than just creating fractions and representing in different ways. So just so you guys know, that might be why your kid struggles a little bit with it. Everybody does. That's just kind of how third grade is with this. So again, we're going to work on equivalent fractions, comparing fractions, representing them. And then there's this idea of unit fraction. And all that a unit fraction is 1 unit of that fraction. So like 1/2, 1/3, 1/4, 1/6, 1/8. It's one of the fractional part that we're talking about. So we're just talking about unit fraction. These are different ways that we will represent fractions. We hit hard the vocabulary of numerator, denominator. There's unit fraction again. We also represent fractions as parts of a set, parts of a whole. We will use a strip diagram there at the bottom, and then we will transition that strip diagram over into how it aligns on a number line. And you're going to see a lot of fractions on number lines because that is also how we will talk about comparing and equivalent fractions. We'll look at number lines and strip diagrams a lot with those two standards. Some more tools at home. This on the right, these are fraction bars or strip diagram. You may hear it called that. That actually is in that little toolkit that you guys picked up on Mobilization Day that was on that little ring of math tools. So your kiddos can see that and kind of see the relationship. We only cover halves, fourths, sixths, and eighths. There obviously are other ones in there. First and second also cover thirds and fifths. They won't get into tenths and twelfths anytime this year. So, but it just kind of lets them see the relationship between different pieces. There's a number line. Again, we use that a lot. Drawing it on a number line, representing on a number line is a really great strategy to use. And then there's the paper plates. And I love the paper plates because it really allows kids to see the relationships and the size differences in a different way. So if you have extra paper plates laying around, you can definitely get them. They don't have to be different color. You just have to label them and cut them into equal parts because we have talked about with the kids that fractions have to be equal. Like when you're partitioning or cutting or splitting or dividing a whole or a set into parts, those parts have to be equal. So just make sure. I would not let your kid cut them. I would say you could cut them because you probably might be a little bit more accurate than they are. After we get done with fractions, we'll be going into multi-step addition and subtraction word problems. And so again, this is the alignment looking at second grade compared to third. You'll see the second grade has lots of different standards of adding up numbers, subtracting numbers, using mental math, doing one-step and multi-step word problems based on place value, recalling facts with that automaticity. Like they need to know their facts like the back of their hand. If they don't, that is a great thing to start doing right now. Find some flashcards, start quizzing them away because at this point they should know those with zero problem. And then they've been generating and solving word problems within 1,000. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be moving all of those strategies and teaching them how to solve with fluency, like quickly, 1- and 2-step problems involving addition and subtraction within 1,000. And we're going to use that strategy based on place value that second grade did, but we're also adding on properties of operations and then the relationship between addition and subtraction, and them knowing if they can set it up one way, they can also flip it to the inverse operation to make it easier, especially when those unknowns are thrown in. That helps them a lot. So a big part of math is not to use the word borrow or carry because we are not borrowing anything from anyone and keeping it. We are not carrying anything over. We really are regrouping a set of numbers in a different way in order for our math to be easier. So if y'all will help us with that language of just it's regrouping, and it's regrouping in addition, and it's regrouping in subtraction. It's always regrouping if we're having to go into a neighboring place to adjust our groupings of a set. So this anchor chart's a really great visual of like how we would do that, how we would decompose a 10 to get our units so that we can, what we would say, borrow, but it's regrouping. Another thing that we saw this week from actually a parent of ours posted on Instagram is using Post-it notes, kind of like we use our place value discs there on the right. You can use Post-it notes to represent a number by the place, by the value of those digits, and then that makes it a little bit easier to add and subtract And that will help with anytime there is a need for regroup, it kind of structures it a little bit differently. And then you can always use these place value discs on the right, or your place value like base 10 that we had printed and gave you in your newest toolkits. So now in reading, there are three main things that we're going to go over: multi-meaning words, determining key events, and analyzing plot elements. And so here on your screen, what you're going to see is you're going to see two different learning progressions, and this is what we use to look for different behaviors in our students to see kind of where they are in our progression of learning. This unit that we actually have just started this week and will continue for the next several weeks is reading to learn. And so the biggest thing is our kids have already learned how to read. And whether your kid is a very fluent reader and flying through books, or they still struggle to decode words, they have the basic understanding and tools of how to read. But they don't always read in order to learn, or they don't always learn when they are reading. And that's what we want. We want to create readers that love to read and that will find books to read that are interesting to them and go out and seek that out because they're wanting to learn something. They're wanting to learn a lesson from a character, or they're wanting to learn new information from an expository text, whatever it may be. So these are different skills we look at: word work and word solving, and then word building. We want to make sure that kids are somewhere in these progressions as we, starting on the left and moving towards the right. So definitely this slide deck is going to be linked in our email. So look through it and see, and I would kind of linger on this slide a little bit and look and see what those true behaviors are that we're looking for. When we find the key event, it's like main idea, right? And so it's the most important thing. What is the author wanting us to pick up on right here in this section? And sometimes it's a big section and sometimes it's a really small paragraph, and that we can find the main idea in different lengths of text. And that's really going to depend a lot on your kiddo. On the right, you'll see the progression of determining that key event. I would take the grade 3 and grade 4 with a grain of salt, because we don't really go by, is this a grade 3 standard or a grade 4? We look at those different behaviors, and you'll see lots of different behaviors in each of them. And as you read, you'll kind of see how the grade 3 one on the left column lends itself into the one on the right. But sometimes kids will go back depending on the topic of text. So that's why we say take it with a grain of salt, because kids will kind of ebb and flow between those two columns a lot. These are two examples of student work of how you could write about the key event. One on the left is like paragraph, and one on the right is what we call like a box and bullet. It's just, the brain's amazing. Yeah, that's the main event. That's the key event. That's the main idea, the central idea. And it's amazing because it helps you read, it monitors the world, and it helps you breathe. So like that's 3 details to support that main idea. And that's one way that we can represent that. When we are looking at fiction stories or historical fiction or narrative nonfiction, which is something we will do this year, mainly biographies, we're going to be looking at story elements, which is like our main character, the setting, the problem, and the resolution. We're going to call it the resolution this year, because not every problem gets solved with a nice little bow at the end. And we will see that when we get into biographies. Not everyone's life ended with a cherry on top. And so, but it does wind up. It does end up a certain way. And so we're going to start calling that the resolution. And so when we're summarizing, that top progression is all about how to retell. And in 3rd grade, we really start summarizing. We will talk about the summary is somebody wanted, but so then. So somebody wanted something, but what happened? That's like an obstacle. Then something else happened. Somebody wanted, but so what else happened? And then is that resolution piece. That's an easy way that they can summarize. And then we just want to make sure they're including all those story elements of time, plot, setting, because that's really important. There's a reason the author put that in. We're going to get into writing now. And writing and reading go hand in hand. Our curriculum is written so that as they are being exposed to texts by published authors, that they can see what it looks like. And those same texts will serve as mentor texts as we are authors of our own writing, and we can see what craft moves published authors made that we can also make in our writing. And so it's very connected. And so these are our checklists that we will be using for our informational writing. We look at structure, development, and language conventions. And you'll see that we grade them or score them. Usually when we use this, it is not a grade. It is either they are not yet doing it, they're beginning to, or they've got it. Like they are doing this every time. It is consistent. They know what they're doing. They know how to do this. So definitely take a minute and linger on this slide so that you can see what's expected. So some of those structures that are referenced on that checklist are boxes and bullets, which is similar to what I just showed you in the reading of how to identify that main idea. Cause and effect, problem solution, pros and cons, and compare and contrast. And we're going to be spending a lot of time on this. And what we want students to be able to do is write about any informational topic in lots of different ways. We want them to know that not every informational text is in a boxes and bullets style. Sometimes different sections have problems and solutions. We see that a lot when we're reading books on animals about endangered species or cause and effect. We see that a lot with endangered species. If we're learning about different beaches in Hawaii, you might compare and contrast there. Or visiting a certain location, you might see some pros and cons. And so different authors structure their writing in different ways. And so we want those to be kind of tried on for size. We want kids to be exposed to that, to see how their writing can change based on how they structure. We know writing can be difficult for kids, and so it's just really important that you are going about writing in an encouraging way, that we want them to write daily as they are going to be independently practicing our skill that we're teaching in our mini lessons. These, I'm not going to read it all to you, but these are just some ideas of ways to encourage your kiddo or help them. We're not so worried. It does not need to be perfect the first time. That's why we have the writing process. We go back and revise before we ever publish. And sometimes we don't get to the publishing stage, and that is okay. We will let them know if they need to have something published, but it doesn't always have to be. The most important thing is, though, that they can read their writing and they know what it says, because if they can't reread what they wrote from yesterday, they're not going to be able to continue on today where they are. Another tip that I have is have your kids write with a pen, and it serves a couple of purposes. One, I can see it. Your teacher can see it a lot better when they post it to Seesaw or they're showing us on their camera on Zoom. Another thing is if you have a couple of different colored pens, they can write in different colors, and we can see how much they're writing each day to help monitor their stamina. And that would be a really great thing. But they do need to have a writer's notebook. They need to have a place where it's kept. We want to be able to see their growth over time. And if they have loose leaf paper all over the house, we're never going to see it, and they're never going to be able to finish a piece because it's just very everywhere, and we want them to be organized. So that is all we have for tonight, but we know that this curriculum night was kind of a last minute, like you just got the date last week. We want to give you guys a heads up that our next one is actually going to be November 2nd at 6 p.m. back here on Zoom, unless COVID magically disappears. But we appreciate your time tonight. Reach out to your child's teacher if you have any questions about anything from tonight, or if there are just any questions that you have, we'd be happy to help with whatever you need, problem solve, whatever. Don't forget that if you didn't pick up your math toolkit on Wednesday afternoon, that you come up to the Miller office. And right when you walk in the front door, there's a table on the right next to our photo cabinet that says third grade, and there are some extras right there. We appreciate you. We appreciate the patience that you guys have had as navigating Virtual Academy, the patience you've had with us, with your kids, with the technology, and learning this whole new platform. But we definitely couldn't do it without you. So we appreciate you. We hope you have a good night.